I'm good to get started right now.
Yeah, I will go ahead. Yeah. I should really give it a minute just to allow some of the attendees to get.
Everyone, we'll get started here in about 2 minutes. Again, if you're just joining us, we'll get started here in about 1 minute. Okay, everyone, we're going to get started. Thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Michael Reese, the city manager of Maplewood. And tonight is to discuss our next police chief. Just a couple opening comments here before we hear from you. The decision on the next police chief will be in mid to late May. That's when we will complete the interview process. Before we conduct the interviews, it's important to hear from the community. It is my decision to appoint the next police chief. However, tonight I will be listening to residents and businesses as you share what's important to you with our next police chief. I will use this input that we get tonight and the type of questions that we ask our candidates, and as I contemplate the police chief appointment decision. So the plan will be to alternate between those who have shown up in person in council chambers and those who are participating on Zoom. And we'll go back and forth, starting with the council chambers first. There's going to be a 3-minute cap. And as you get close to the 3 minutes, if you're still talking, I'll try to give you a friendly warning to wrap it up. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and get started with hearing from you tonight, and we'll start in the council chambers. Who would like to go first? Just once. You have more than 3 minutes, is that what you're saying?
I just have a question for things, but I can start.
Okay. Well, we'd like you to come up to the podium, and you have to push the mic, right?
Yes.
You have to push the mic for it to be operable and for everyone to hear you.
Just one.
You have to hold it.
I have to hold it.
Okay, we have Mr. Josh Korea, who is going to be speaking from council chambers here.
Yes. Can you hear me? Is it working? Holding it? Okay, they can hear me. So I'm going to ask, I have sort of 3 questions and or considerations, and I'll make them fairly quick. One is for if I would want any new potential police chief candidate to answer this question. What do you view as the essential role of the police in Maplewood? 2 summers ago, in a conversation between the Maplewood Police Department and residents, one of the officers, in fact, actually Sergeant Stephen Jamerson, stated that the role of the police in Maplewood was, quote, to sell jail, end quote. And I think that sends a very direct message regarding the purpose of policing in our city. And I don't think it's a very pretty one. So any candidate, all candidates, I would ask them if they agree with that sort of analysis or that role of the Maplewood Police Department, and how they would interpret that, what that means from one of the officers currently here in Maplewood to sell jail. The other thing I want to talk about, I would ask definitely specifically all the candidates is how would they work to prevent the practice of what we refer to as wandering police in St. Louis in the regional area. We often refer to it more, I think, locally as the muni shuffle, meaning police officers who sort of move from municipality to municipality, typically because there has been some sort of infraction, some disciplinary action taken against them, or they have been alleged to do or have done some misconduct. Again, we have an officer currently here in our department in Maplewood, Justin Cosmo, who faced 2 previous lawsuits in Ferguson for police brutality. One against 2 journalists, one of whom was a Washington Post journalist, and one of these lawsuits involved a 12-year-old boy. And he was hired here in Maplewood after those lawsuits. So my question to any potential candidate is, what will you do about this? It's endemic. It happens all over the St. Louis region, county, and city. And how would they prevent it from happening in the hiring process of new officers, paying attention to this, and especially working either with or honestly against unions from keeping past officer misconduct undisclosed during the hiring process? We, as residents, I think, need to know this and be made aware of this during that process so that we can have some input and provide some insight to the department when it comes to hiring officers who are our community members. And then finally, I was going to ask the question to, again, every candidate: what are some of the barriers to good police-community relations, and what steps can be taken to eliminate them? For many of our residents and visitors to Maplewood, their initial, if not their only interaction with the city or with the city representative is with the police. So what can be done to improve these interactions with citizens and visitors? And I'm not speaking about benevolent interactions. I'm talking about day-to-day on the street interactions that are both direct, but also indirect. So how our police present themselves to the community in very sort of basic ways. What are they wearing? Why are they wearing such militarized gear and equipment and clothing? What about the representations of gender and race and ethnicity on the force, and how is that sort of showing things to our community? And also,
You can wrap it up, please.
also the behavior of our police, noticing how they behave and how they interact with individuals here in our community. So I'd ask all 3 of those things to be considered. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, if those who are participating via Zoom, if you could raise your hand, please, and I'll click on the first person that I see. If you're interested in speaking this evening. Again, if you're interested in speaking this evening and you're on Zoom, please raise your hand. And while we're still waiting, I'll go to the next person here at Council Chambers. Beth, would you like to speak? For the record, can you just state your name?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Is that to do this? Okay. Sorry. Okay, yeah, I'm Beth Newman. I have something written down in my notes, but then of course, technology is not working, which is great. I don't really have anything prepared. I think I just would echo a lot of the things that Josh Priya was saying. As a resident of Maplewood, I too was very concerned when I discovered that there was an officer hired here, Justin Cosmo, who had a problematic work history. I would reiterate that if I don't want our municipality to be a place where officers know that they can come to when they have issues in terms of lawsuits and problematic work histories. I would like our police chief to understand that that's not the kind of community that we want, and we don't want our police officers that have those kinds of issues. I'd also, in a police chief, I think this goes without saying that we want someone who's certainly aware of the history of policing and how different communities view policing. And, as a white person, I, might view it differently than someone who is a person of color. And I would want a police chief who would be sensitive to that and understand that. And then the other piece of it is, it seems like such a minor thing, but, social media is obviously so prevalent. And I would really like a police chief that understands, I'm not saying they have to be, an expert in all things social media, but to at least understand what it is and how it impacts the community. Not to go into great detail, but there were some things that were happening on social media that had the Maplewood Police Department sort of attached to it. And I thought it was very harmful for the community, and it really, for me personally, made me more distrustful of the police department. And our past police chief, I'm not trying to say anything negative, but I think he just didn't quite understand the connection and the power of social media and how that can affect the perception that the public has of the police department. And so I would really like a police chief that understands that, and understands how that works, and understands how different comments from other places can really sort of impact the perception of our police department.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, we're now going to go to Zoom, and we have just a moment here. Ms. Killian, I'm going to bring you in just a moment. I'm going to go to allow her to talk. It's a moment to panelists.
I'm not even getting Can you make me a couple?
Just bear with us for a moment here. Okay, Ms. Killian, you're on. And feel free to share your comments. You have 3 minutes, please. We can't hear you. You must be muted.
Okay, I have several different things. The ex-police chief should have a vested interest in the community, be familiar with the Maplewood community and what is important to the citizens of Maplewood and to the citizens of the St. Louis area in general, because we deal with people outside of Maplewood every day. They must be of good moral character and treat people fairly. They must support community policing and develop and create new ideas in community policing. Most of all, he should be out in the public, available to the public, attend outdoor events, be visible to all citizens, be it on social media, but even more importantly, out there with the public one-on-one. They should have confidence in their officers, but be able to discipline them whenever it is necessary. And most of all, you must keep confidentiality with no discussion with family or friends as to what is going on. And those are just some ideas. I've asked friends who are police officers, families of police officers, both here in Maplewood and around the country who I know, just to get basic ideas. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay. We'll go back to council chambers and see if there's anyone else that would like to speak. Yeah. If there's others who are joined us on Zoom, if you please raise your hand so we can hear from you tonight. Or if you're thinking about it, we'll give you a little bit of time here to think about it, but we do want to hear from you. This could be a very quick night. Okay. We do have two individuals, so let me get to both of you. Ms. Robinson, welcome.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Reese. I have two questions that I like to ask. And one of them is about our police officers being more interactive in the community, even though we have events, they're out, but they're not interactive. They only interact with people they're familiar with. What would the new chief expectation be on that? Even when they're on a bicycle, nice days, get out and talk to the people in the community so people won't have a perception. There's already a perception about Maplewood and the police department. How can we break that stigma? Also, by our neighborhood being very diverse, not just in race, but other status, how the police officer is going to, I would say, be more understanding and put their biases aside. Just because, you might see this African-American young boy with dreads and sagging, you're already looking at him, profiling him. I mean, how can we stop some of the biases that they already have when it comes to certain residents? How the new chief going to really train the officers on diversity. And not only that, our LGBTQ community is growing here in Maplewood. How much training would they need to be better police officer for everyone that lives in Maplewood and not look at someone and already be judgmental about it? So those are my two questions that I like to make sure it get addressed, and some of my concerns.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, we're gonna go to the next individual here. Yes, Ms. Helmuth. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah, it's Heidi Helmuth. You able to hear me?
Thank you. We can hear you. And please go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
So I have a variety of thoughts I've been trying to write down and I apologize, I have animals who might make some noise. To me, a critical characteristic for our new police chief is someone who's going to listen and hear residents openly. And that they're willing to realize that even a good police force can improve. I've been to past listening sessions, and in those questions and suggestions were most times met with repeated comments of how good our force already is, how few complaints they had, and things like that. It never felt like there was real listening going on. I come from a field that also has its detractors, including very passionate ones. People who are very vocal in being against the field that I've spent over 30 years working in. Hang on. Here. Sorry. And I think my field in policing shares some commonalities in how you can handle these types of situations, both successfully and unsuccessfully. I work at the St. Louis Zoo, and I've worked in the zoo and aquarium field for over 30 years. And there are some people who are passionately against animals in captivity or zoos. And I think one place that my industry needs to be better is calling out the bad zoos that do not care for their animals well. But many zoos are afraid to say anything openly bad about even terrible zoos because it might cause some to paint all zoos with that same brush. I think this keeps many police that same type of feeling in fear of openly criticizing the bad amongst themselves. But until we can all do that openly and consistently, none of us have a moral leg to stand on with our detractors. I see a very strong commonality with policing in this way. I think if police regularly and consistently call out bad practices or bad officers, it would lend a lot more confidence and credence to the many, many good officers and forces, which are the vast number in the profession. But by protecting these people or ignoring the bad amongst their ranks, they perpetuate and elevate those that may be overly aggressive or bigoted or have similar characteristics. Many have already mentioned the fact that Maplewood was relatively recently willing to hire an officer with multiple excessive force complaints. This is antithetical to what we should stand for, and it absolutely should appall the right candidate for our new police chief. Our next police chief needs to listen and really hear the residents. They need to prioritize, require, and reward officers who report bad actions or bad officers and who actively intervene in these actions when needed. They need to have transparency in their hiring requirements and processes and in disciplinary procedures. They also need to increase the ability of training for de-escalation of situations when possible, including increasing our social worker involvement so that it's more of a resource to all officers every day to help with situations that require those skills versus police training. Basically, Maplewood needs to be a model for community policing and for the new wave of policing where we're willing to call out the bad amongst ourselves. And at the end of the day, the new chief needs to listen, really listen to our residents so that we can be everything that Maplewood is supposed to be. Thank you for listening.
Okay. Thank you for your comments, Ms. Helmuth. Appreciate it. Okay. The floor is open, so if you'd like to raise your hand, we'll give it some time here, but we'd like to hear from you. So I'll give this another minute or two, but be a little patient. But if you do want to speak, please raise your hand here in the next minute or so. If not, we'll be ending rather early this evening. We have had 5 speakers so far, and between Laura and myself and the recording, we're capturing all those comments. So. So I'm going to allow Mr. Priya, if you want to speak again, if you have more to share, I'll allow that. I'm going to allow Ms. Killian to speak first, okay? Well, she did have her. Ms. Killian, you had your hand raised again. Did you want to talk again? Okay, I do have a question here, so. Ms. Killian, if you do want to speak, please raise your hand and I'll get to you eventually if you want to speak again. There was just a question posed. Let me go to Ms. Killian first and then I'll address that question. Okay, Ms. Killian, would you like to comment again, please?
I was just going to ask a question about what you specifically look for when you're looking for a candidate for police chief.
Yeah, this is really for me to hear from the community. I'm forming those thoughts now. I'm not going to share with you all tonight what I'm looking for. So I really want to hear from the community. But I will talk. Do you have anything else you'd like to share?
Just that I think it was stated the police should be in the community, out, and I think the community should also take steps to know the police too, to know the chief, to know the officers. When they see them, if they have a chance to stop and chat with them, go to functions where they can meet them, stop them on the street on their bicycles. That way they know you, you know them. You can tell them your feelings or complaints in person, as well as on social media, but the one-on-one, face-to-face is so much better.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so let me address this question first that was, and I'll see if anyone else wants to speak. There was a question about what our process is, which is a fair question that I should answer. So we put a job posting out about a little over a month ago. And we casted a wide net in a national search. We have a search consultant who's helping us with this, who we brought on board last year, who also helped us with the fire chief search. Once we completed the fire chief search, we moved on to our police chief search, casted a wide net, have put it in out on a variety of outlets, including those that would reach minority and female candidates. And the resume process closed on March 30th, so about 2 weeks ago. And I'm working with our search consultant to narrow it down to 4 to 6 candidates who will be interviewed the week of May 9th and the week of May 16th. So that's the process. The interview will not just involve myself, although it will be my decision to appoint the police chief. We're going to have a panel that includes 2 of my peers, Mark Perkins, who's the Creve Coeur city manager, and Gregory Rose, who's the University City manager. And then a resident will also be involved. That resident is Linda Robinson. And then our assistant city manager, Anthony Traxler, will be on the community panel. And possibly our finance director, Lexi Miller. But so we're going to have a balance of city staff and members in the community. And I want to get their advice as we do these interviews and conclude them. I'm not just listening to my own thoughts, but I'm getting other opinions. And maybe I might have missed something during the interview process. I think that's really important. Once we complete that interview process in mid-May, we will either select a candidate or narrow it down to 2 for a final round. Not sure which direction we'll go, but either way, we will be making a decision in May. It could be mid-May or it might be late May, depending on whether we have a second round or not. So that's the process. And as we move forward and make a selection, I will obviously communicate that when we're ready to. You're welcome. Someone just said thank you, so you're welcome. Okay. Again, if you want to speak this evening, please raise your hand and I'll call on you, allow you to talk. Mr. Korea, did you want to make some additional comments?
Yeah. Thanks. I just want to reiterate a lot of what's already been said. I appreciate what everyone said, Mary and Linda, Heidi, but to Heidi's point about community policing and us being a role model for other municipalities, both locally, regionally, and across the country, I do want the chief to recognize that there's that potential here. And if that potential doesn't just only rely or lie with the police department, but the city itself has already become engaged and has been engaged with this as well as the larger community. So it's really incumbent upon the chief to recognize that, acknowledge those efforts that are already existing, and then sort of work collaboratively with those efforts. We recently started the Human Services Commission, and we hope to be working intimately with the police about how we can draw our own resources to bear on some of the things that they're doing with and move some of that work off of them, things that we can work with. So I want them to acknowledge they're working in a collaborative space. It's not just with residents, which it is, with citizens or visitors to make work, but also other municipal and city organizations and entities, commissions, et cetera. So they need to make sure that they're able to cross those lines and work collaboratively with others. And again, this last but not least, in relationship also to that, I'd ask them if they were also available to engaging with citizens in a sort of oversight committee. The Human Services Commission is a different entity, but there has been some talk, and we have bandied about the idea, meaning me and other residents, about an oversight committee or a collaborative citizen committee that's independent from the MPD, but also works to help monitor and review police policies and practices, provide them input, and even scrutiny and possible criticism. Acting as a sort of voice or outlet for community members to provide them information about how policing is going and being perceived or experienced. Your community.
Thank you, Mr. Priya. Okay. So kind of one more final call here. I'll give it about a minute. If you'd like to, we still have a number of folks who are tuning in tonight, which is great. Perhaps you just want to listen as well. But if you'd like to offer your thoughts, make some comments, we'd love to hear from you. Okay. Yes, Ms. Helmuth, you would like to comment again, please?
Yeah, I just want to actually build upon one of the last comments that was just made that was really great about the Citizens Oversight Board. Maybe even a different model, something that's more of a citizens advisory committee that's not just for when looking at a negative situation. So an oversight board tends to be an adversarial type of relationship at times, but maybe there could be something that is more of a regularly convening group of citizens that meet with the police to just talk about how the city is feeling and, you know, be there having those kind of communications for good things as well as maybe challenging times and opening up those lines of communication. I agree with what Mary said, that it's all of our responsibilities to introduce ourselves as well as it is for them to, you know, our police force to be open to that. But maybe we could model something that brings citizens and our officers together in a more structured way, not just over one topic or negative situations, but more generally to keep the communication open. I think that could be a great model for Maplewood. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
I did. That's fine. Just say thank you. She's gonna say.
Okay. Other comments online here? People would like to participate via Zoom? I'm going to give it like 20 or 30 seconds, and then if there's no one that raises their hand, we're going to end. We do have, to kind of wrap this up, I'll have Laura Miller help me with this, but you can offer your comments online on the website.
Correct.
And where do you go?
You can go to the homepage of the website.
Mhm.
There's also a link on the Facebook post, and I'll do another message tomorrow, social media and email blast to let people know that you still have time to comment.
Great. And that will be through about May the 13th. You can comment. So about another full month. Okay, and we will look at those very diligently. Okay, so we're going to end this evening. Very much appreciate those who tuned in and didn't talk, and those who did share your thoughts. Appreciate everyone who came in person and who tuned in via Zoom here. And we'll look forward to reporting back to you in the next 30 to 45 days on this matter. Okay, thank you all.